You're tuned in to We Talk Radio Network.
I think one of the main things that happened here, I want us to be clear about this part too, is I think some of the cops looked at them as friendly because of the fact that possibly, I'm not saying it wasn't a whole conspiracy there, but I think maybe, some of the talk is that they were thinking that these people were quote unquote friendly because they've been so pro-police, right? And Black Lives Matter movement is not. And so they were, being friendlier to them. Now, I'm not saying, again, there was not some kind of conspiracy. I don't know that. I'm positive somebody else out there has
Well, then you're misled because Miss Waters from California spoke tonight and said that she talked to one of the policemen and they were all told, and the chief, and they were told they didn't need any help. And even when it was going on, they were saying, we need help. Remember that policeman that was coming up and down the stairs and they were kind of egging him and he kept backing up?
Right.
When they got to a certain level of the stairs, he turned right. He looked left, which is where all of Congress was, and then he looked right, and then he started going backwards to the right to steer these people away from going to the left, or they would have got in that room.
Wow. I'm going to bring a few people in. Great conversation tonight. Métis, we're going to keep this conversation going. We're going to bring a couple people in. If you want to chat with us tonight, push number 1. If you're in the queue and you want to chat, push number 1 so that we know you are there. I'm going to bring Mr. Ball in. A Ball, he's hanging out with us tonight, as well as
Mr. J.
Mr. J.
From Maryland.
Mr. J from Maryland. So we're going to bring Mr. J in and Mr. Andre in as well. What's up, Mr. Dre? How are you?
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Good evening. Good, Mr. J, how are you?
I always wanted to know what made that officer go right instead of left.
Man, now we know. We're finna talk about it.
Yeah.
We're finna talk about it. We're finna talk about it.
It was a visual. I saw it on MSNBC, and they were saying, and Nancy said and Waters said, this is why because he had to redirect them. And actually, when the Proud Boys got up to the floor of the steps, they actually looked down to the right, and you couldn't see the people right away, and then they started following the policeman because they thought it was more intimidating.
That's
so
right.
They thought the policeman was hiding them from something, so he went the opposite direction.
I want to bring in Mr. J as well. Mr. J, how are you today?
I'm great. How you doing?
We are fabulous. Mr. Ball, Andre, you're calling from what area?
I'm here in Plano.
And Mr. J, you are in?
I'm in Maryland, about 12 miles from the capital, D.C.
Ooh, so you got some action going.
Listen,
in the front row.
I need you to go sit out on the balcony for just a little while longer. We need to chat. Listen.
Wow.
Okay, so Mr. Andre and Mr. J are here with us tonight. Mr. Andre, give them a little brief description about yourself, and then Mr. J, give them a description of tell us who you are and what you do. Go right ahead, Mr. Ball, and then Mr. Andre Ball, and then Mr. J. Go right ahead.
All right, nice to meet everyone. My name's Andre Ball, better known as Indy or DJ Indy. Those letters hold huge significance. Most people know those letters from South Bend, Indiana, and the University of Notre Dame. I have been working in every aspect of music for nearly 30 years. And for the past 2 years, I've been an commercial energy consultant. So anyone who has commercial business facilities, I would be more than happy to assist you in managing your energy for you and looking at options to help you manage your overhead to benefit you more within whatever position you may be in now. One of my largest accounts that I handle is the Salvation Army of DFW. I'm currently involved in different projects from energy consultation to some Bitcoin projects. And also I'm part of the Black Wall Street Initiative now, which is basically giving a new perspective on credit and financing for small to large businesses to bridge the generation and generational wealth gap. And so those all are things that are traditionally given to folks with paid consultation situations, but the Black Wall Street, New Black Wall Street initiative means that that information is now free and available from successful financing and millionaire and billionaire investors to go ahead and assist with that.
And we're going to get you on to speak about that as well on another show. I want to make sure we get you highlighted on another show to talk about that. Absolutely.
So
Mr. J.
That's what I do. That's where I've been. If you want more information, feel free to find me on all platforms at The Real Indy or The Real DJ Indy. And I love to hear from you after the call.
The Real DJ Indy. You heard it here first. Thank you, DJ Indy. Go ahead, Mr. J.
Good afternoon. I'm Jay. Just call me JC. I'm a Navy veteran. Matter of fact, my first duty station was right there in Naval Air Station in Dallas, Texas, outside of Grand Prairie. Did Grand Prairie, Point McGill, California, New Orleans. Did time on the Eisenhower for installing cow pens. Ended up right here in Washington, D.C. And that's why I retired in 2011. And my last job after I got out of the Navy, I worked for veterans, pay, benefits, and allowances, and I did a lot of time on Capitol Hill. So that's it in a nutshell.
I'm going to start with you, Mr. J. Since you worked there in the building, in the facility, you were there, you probably know people that were affected by what happened on January the 6th. I want to get your opinion, and then Mr. DJ Indy, I'm going to come to you. Tell me what your opinion on exactly what happened on January 6th at the Capitol.
Well, what happened was an insurrection. There's no doubt about that. What happened was an attempt to take over the government. Their mission was to stop the ratification of the electoral vote count, because once that's over, President-elect Biden would have been announced by the President of the Senate. So that's what they were trying to stop. And they put a pause on it, but they did not stop it. As far as, you listen to the crowd. They were yelling, "This is our house. This is our house." Well, that's right. That's our house. I've been in the Capitol many times. You know how I got in? I went to the door. I showed my ID. I went through the metal detectors. I went and toured the building or went to visit whoever I had to visit. And when I left, I went back to the door and I left. This building, this is not a playground for people to come and just go inside as they need to. This was an insurrection. It was dangerous. People died. These people need to be held accountable, including the President of the United States and the senators and the congressmen who helped. It's awful. We could have lost this country. Well, let me take that back. Damage was done. The country will survive because the National Guard will defend the country. It may take time, but the country will survive, and it may not be over yet. But this was dangerous. Make no doubt, this was extremely, extremely dangerous.
Right.
Oh, Mr. Ball. Indeed, DJ Indy, tell me your thoughts on what happened at the Capitol.
Well, one of the things, when I was in college, one of the classes I took was African American film studies, and so any film student or any African American history, African American film student will have to watch a film called Birth of a Nation. It's a silent film. If anybody's familiar with it, a lot of people are familiar with the newer Birth of a Nation film. It was made to stereotype Black people and ridicule the what life would be like once Black people were able to vote and have equal rights and run for office. And that's where that graphic comes from for the graphic to present tonight's radio talk show. And so the idea was that, okay, if black people get into Congress and had a majority, hold the majority of seats, we'd be in there eating chicken, watermelon, legs kicked up on the desk with no shoes on. And so I found it ironic that the minute that that some white folks got in there, a particular set of white folks, I'm not a separatist in that. In fact, my wife is white. But I just found that it was really interesting that the first thing they did was go in there and act unruly and violent and go in the manner in which they did, even though everyone has a right to walk in, as the gentleman from Maryland was saying. But to go in and kick your feet up on a desk, like that's what you would do if you actually work there. I just found it interesting that what they wanted to promote an image of black folks doing in the White House if they ever took it over, be it by vote or be it by insurrection. That's the first image, a lot of the images that we saw. And so my feelings on the situation is that it's not about Republicans or Democrats or parties, but I do believe that Donald Trump took advantage of a certain group of folks that he don't even really fool with. And I think that by him taking advantage of them for political objectives, he has to deal with the chickens that came home to roost from what he's been doing for 4 years. And so that's what I saw. I didn't see all the domestic terrorists and this and that. I know those are legal things that you can throw at people, but I really saw what has been sitting and brewing and waiting to happen as a result of his bad politics.